Welcome, everybody. John Aravosis here. This is the Aravosis Report. You're watching me on TikTok and YouTube and lots of other fun places. And tonight we are going to, as always, do our daily update on what's been going on in Ukraine the last 24 hours. I'd say the big story today is probably mobilization and how it ain't going so well. Putin's effort to recruit another several 100,000 men to go to Ukraine. He's recruiting them, but they're not fighting very well. So we will talk about that in a minute. As always, I think just to start for a quick second, maybe introduce yourselves where you're from. Yeah, cue the Russians on TikTok. But just a quick hello and where you guys are from. I think it's always nice. So even on YouTube, although I know you guys all know each other, but there still may be somebody new one of these days. Hey guys, all the TikTokers are there. I don't know anything about University of Massachusetts. Anyway, guys, so yeah, today's Friday, which is very good. Tomorrow, by the way, just as a reminder, on my Discord community, we're having a special video chat, monthly video chat for $25 and up subscribers as a special gift to them. So, special gift. It's part of their subscription as a special gift. But so hopefully the $25 and uppers show up. It'll be at 2:00 Eastern on the Discord. We do have a Discord, by the way, in general. It's a discord.aravosis.com. We've also got a store. I've got a Patreon set up. If you just want to support me with Patreon, you can find all of that with my last name on TikTok. You can see it there on YouTube and everywhere else, aravosis.com. Aravosis.com will take you to my link tree, and you can see all of those links for me. Final thing is, obviously, appreciate you guys' support. Thank you for the October thing already on TikTok. You guys, for questions on TikTok, submit questions in the Q&A function that you see in my profile. You'll see a link for Q&A. For the rest of you, obviously, use the comment box. As you know, I'm doing this as independent media, doing it full time. So I very much appreciate your support. If you can help me, I would appreciate it. On TikTok, that means I really appreciate the gifts. You guys are amazing. Keep them coming. And for you guys on YouTube, the super chat questions and the super stickers help me out as well. So thank you. Final thing, I just found out for you TikTokers, and don't say I never did anything for you, because this is going to help you on TikTok in general. Thank you for the hat. I was told you get a bigger bang for your buck buying either gold or diamonds, whichever it is you buy on TikTok, if you buy them on your desktop computer rather than buying them on your phone. Your phone has all sorts of other charges, and apparently you will not get as many. So go to your next time you buy more diamonds and gold or whatever it is on TikTok, do it from your desktop computer. And then go and use, thank you for the glasses, then go and use your iPad or your phone or whatever. But just so you know, I did not know this myself, so that I thought was pretty good. And that's it. So let me dig right in, guys. For the moderators too, I'm sorry, last little point. Tomorrow's $25 and up video, thank you for the glasses, video chat is for the moderators as well. Because, oops, I've got my little thing rolling here, is for the moderators as well. So moderators, you guys are included because I try to give you guys something. And thank you for all the gifts on TikTok. I see them all rolling in. You guys are being amazing. Thank you. All right, so let's get rolling, guys. So the big story today, as I said, is I think the mobilization. I've got a number of stories I'm going to hit here. Let me start first with just a quick Elon Musk update. And, look, I hate getting into Elon Musk drama every day, but it's important because this is regarding the Starlink internet. And Elon let it be known a month ago privately to the Pentagon, but it finally went public last night that he no longer can afford to keep paying for Starlink in Ukraine, and he wants the Pentagon to step in and pay the rest of the year for Starlink, which was $120 million, and to pay next year's Starlink bill, which is $400 million. Now, it's interesting. I've been seeing look, I always say, I am not an Elon hater. I'm not sure I like Elon because I've been following him enough now over the last couple of years. I am impressed with Tesla, even though people say he stole it. I'm still impressed. I'm very impressed with SpaceX because I'm sorry, but the rockets going up and coming down, again, he's done amazing things. So I'm not going to knock him for that, or I'm not going to not give him credit for that. But he promised to help Ukraine. And we already found out that a lot of the services he claimed were free were actually being paid for by the Pentagon with Starlink. We thought they were going to be free. They weren't totally free. Now we find out that He just doesn't want to pay anymore what he's already paying. The gift he gave Ukraine, he's taking it back. And somebody I thought put this really well yesterday. And they said, he's the richest man in the world. And I Googled, and he still is the richest man in the world. He's the richest man in the world. But what really got me, they said he got pissed off at some people on Twitter last month, and he decided to buy Twitter again as a result. He got pissed off, and he's now spending $44 billion with a B dollars on Twitter. He's got that kind of chump change around, even though everyone says it makes no sense for him to buy Twitter. But he can't spend $100 million or $400 million to stop a genocide when he already promised that to Ukraine. This is a gift he's taking back. That's my take on it. I don't think we should, expect companies to do things for free or people to do things for free. But the guy offered a gift already. Don't tell me after you offer a gift that, I'm going broke when you're buying Twitter for $44 billion and there's no reason for you to buy Twitter other than, again, people online were mean to Elon, so he decided to buy Twitter. All right. Next topic. This one, at least, we can all agree on, unless you're Russian, and then you're not going to be very happy about this. Unless you're a Russian who's a good Russian, then you'll be happy about this. Mobilization. The Russian mobilization is not going well at all. This is great news for the Ukrainians and for all of us, I think. They've been able to mobilize maybe 200,000 men. We do know that. Putin had claimed 300,000 men they were going to mobilize. The little secret documents apparently might have actually allowed up to 1 million men being mobilized. But it looks now like maybe they've got 200,000. Putin claims that this was my favorite. The thing is, the Russian government are such liars. And this is the thing. And the thing is, I still fall for their lies sometimes. A couple days ago, there were some stories out that the mobilization was going so well that Putin already had, enough men, or even I said 200,000. I shouldn't say there's 200,000. We don't know. He may have only gotten 60,000, 50,000. But they said it was going so well that actually they were going to pause it, or in 2 weeks they were going to pause the mobilization and no longer have to, get more men because they're doing great in Russia with all the men they've got. And I actually believed it when I read the story. Well, it's been a freaking disaster what's going on. I'm jumping ahead a little. Oh, no, I'm not jumping ahead. I was going to mention this right now. They have been going all across Russia now, especially Moscow. Moscow, which is really interesting because Moscow, they've got to be really careful in Moscow because that's where the rich people are. That's where the connected people are. They are setting up secret police. Thank you for the gift on TikTok. The Russians have set up their little secret police and their undercover cops outside, actually not outside, inside the lobby of apartment buildings around Moscow, waiting for people to come down. I was watching a video a second ago. I was going to show you, but it doesn't really matter. Watching a video, and it's showing one woman in the whole official police outfit and 2 undercover cops. And they're sitting there in the lobby of somebody's apartment building at 7:30 in the morning, waiting for young Muscovites aged 18 to 27, 28, 29, whatever it is, to come down to leave their buildings and serve them all with draft papers to mobilize them, to enlist them in the military. And mind you, they're not looking for specific people. They're looking for anybody in the building who's walking out who's draft age. They're doing it in the Moscow subway. Actually, 3 different subways I saw that they're doing it. And I did see these videos as well yesterday. They're literally standing, and mind you, people need the subway to get to work, so they really don't have a way around it, right? They're standing in front of the subways and they're stopping everybody who looks like a young guy. One of the videos showed like a couple walking by. They were fine because they looked like they were in their 30s or 40s. And then a guy who clearly is like a guy in his 20s and he's got his hoodie on. They stopped him, make him take out his ID, and if he's the right age, he's drafted. That is not what you do when things are going really well. Whoa. Whoa. Only people on TikTok can appreciate what we just got. There was somebody bought a very cool whale. And the best part is I've got my sound off on TikTok, but the sound still came through. Whoa. Okay. That was, sorry. You have to be on TikTok to appreciate this, but it's literally like the whole screen is taken over by a 3D whale. We do like our ducks as well. The Affleck duck. That was pretty, I'm like blushing. That was so, everyone on TikTok's going, whoa. All right. So, but yes. So the thing is, they're not doing well enough on the mobilization, or they wouldn't have to be grabbing men in their lobbies of the buildings at random. They wouldn't have to be stopping people at random getting onto the subways unless they were desperate for men. So once again, they lied to us. I fell for it, and I've got to stop falling for it, but they lied to us. They're not doing well with the mobilization. More details on this. So speaking of, again, they lie. 1 second here. So the Russia government officially announced 5 deaths, the first 5 deaths amongst the newly mobilized, which means a lot more than 5 have died. The report of these 5 deaths of the first of the newly mobilized men led many pro-war military bloggers, this was from the Institute for the Study of War, led many pro-war military bloggers to claim, let me stop a second. I'm going to be talking a lot about military bloggers in this episode as well, because they're in real trouble now, it looks, maybe, which would be hilarious. Basically, in the 2000s, we had a blogging movement here in America. And I was actually one of the big bloggers, big political bloggers in the US. My blog was one of the top 10 blogs. And we were very powerful, and basically people that we'd write our opinions about politics, actually not very different from what I'm doing with you guys today. My opinions, looking at the news, analyzing, because my background is in foreign policy, my background as a lawyer, I've worked in the US Senate. So I was using like all of those experiences to explain to people what the news meant, which is actually what I do with you guys, right? So military bloggers do the same thing. Russia has got a lot of folks with military experience. Thank you for the gift on TikTok there. With military experience, and they've been doing videos and writing, short essays, short paragraphs or 2 about their analysis of how the war is going. Well, the Russian military bloggers have been very powerful. They've had large audiences. Some of these guys have got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers, okay? Very popular, usually on Telegram, which is a very popular social media app in Russia, in Ukraine as well. Actually, I don't really use it, but the Ukrainians and the Russians like it a lot. And these guys have very good connections with the military, so they tend to get their stories right. Thank you, Wanda, for the balloons. They tend to get their stories right, and they're very far right, meaning they're very pro-Putin, they're very pro-war. If anything, their complaint is that the Russians have not fought hard enough. They want Russia to kill civilians. They want Russia to blow up Ukraine entirely. So they've been complaining that things aren't going well enough. And they've also been complaining that things just aren't going well, which they're right about that, right? So that's your background on who the military bloggers are. So Putin, the government comes out and says, our first 5 men have died in Ukraine from the newly mobilized. The military bloggers come out and go, that's not true. These guys are really playing dangerous games with their government because they live in a dictatorship. And they're pro-government, but they're criticizing the government. So it gets better as I go on here. The report led many pro-war military bloggers to claim that the number of dead and wounded among mobilized servicemen is likely higher than this due to lack of promised training, equipment, unit cohesion, and commanders, as well as repeated instances of wrongful mobilization. So the military bloggers are still criticizing Putin and saying, A, he lied about how many of the new guys have died, and B, the reason we know more have died is because they're still mobilizing the wrong people, meaning they're mobilizing people who they say they weren't going to mobilize, like I just told you, people at random on the street. They weren't going to do that. They're doing it. They're lying about it. They're not giving them enough training. They're not giving them enough equipment. These guys have got a lot of chutzpah. I'm going to come back to them in a minute because this really is the big story today. I think this whole thing about the mobilization and the military bloggers. So the next thing, this is actually a sad story. Just to give you an example again, one of the newly mobilized, and this again is part of the reason we know that the Russians are lying. Thank you, Bonnie, for the galaxy there, because we already know there are people from the beginning of the war who have been really going around and finding all the obituaries of these, poor Russian men. I say poor Russian men. I mean, I'm very divided on this because obviously I'm not happy with Russia in this war, and the Russian soldiers are committing war crimes. Having said that, a lot of these guys are cannon fodder. They are literally warm bodies being thrown out there, and they're going to die. And the Kremlin doesn't care that they're going to die. And that it still bothers me, even though we're dealing with Russian troops who are committing war crimes, so I get very divided. Thank you for the glasses there. So listen to this. This is an obituary put up by a friend of a former head of a Moscow city government office. And this was shared. The reason I know this is true, by the way, it was shared by a reporter with the Wall Street Journal that I follow. Okay. So it wasn't just nobody. He says, Lesha, this is the announcement, Lesha Martinov, and it shows a picture of the poor guy's coffin with the flowers around it. Lesha Martinov, 28 years old, head of department in the Moscow government. This is just a Google translate of the Russian. A friend and colleague of my close friends, mobilized on September 23rd, died heroically on October 10th. He died 2.5 weeks after he got the draft notice, okay, the mobilization notice. In his youth, he served in the so-and-so regiment, 0 combat experience. He was sent to the front line almost a few days later and died. And then the guy says, and this is a notice from his friends on Telegram writing this, okay? Military chiefs, now is not the time to lie. You can't lie at all, and now it's a crime. I'm asking for prayers for warrior Alexei. His friend got called up within 2 or 3 days. They sent him to the front, and a week and a half later, he died. Almost no training. We know this. A number of these guys are getting no training at all. They don't have a military background, most of them. By law, they're supposed to have a military background. Nobody's supposed to get drafted who doesn't have a military background at this point. Most of the guys still don't have a military background. At most, I've been reading, they've been giving these poor guys, I know, I'm really divided on this because I hate saying poor guys because I know we're dealing with war criminals, but it's, I imagine myself in this situation or somebody else who's just trying to get by, and they call you up and they don't even give you training. A lot of these guys, I think they literally, from what I'd read, they literally gave them like a couple bullets and taught them to shoot the gun, but literally not to use the gun, just to shoot the gun. Like the bullet goes in, fire, boom. Okay, you're done. You're done. That's it. Some of these guys, there was a video out the other day showing 5 guys in eastern Ukraine, I think it is, and they surrendered. Thank God. They didn't even mean to surrender. They were just trying to get the heck out of there. They didn't know what to do. Most of their fellow, their new recruits, most of their fellow recruits died, got killed. Thank you for the glasses, Weston. Most of their fellow recruits died, and they were trying to run away, and they ran into a group of Ukrainian soldiers who said, if you want to live, put down your weapons. And they went, okay. I mean, to their credit, the Ukrainians, they could have just killed. They could have just seen Russian soldiers and killed them. So these guys surrender. And these guys did a video talking about what happened. And they said, for example, that like I said, they got no training on their weapons at all. They literally had to read a manual. They were sent to the front in eastern Ukraine, and they were given a manual. Oh, thank you, Cammie. Sweet of you. Actually, that's kind of, I've not seen that one before. That was cool. They were given a manual, a book explaining how their weapons worked. And in order to use their weapons, they read the book on the front. Imagine you're getting shelled by the Ukrainians and you're sitting here with a book going, oh my God, these poor guys. Any case. So a little more from the Russian military bloggers via Institute for Study of War. Russian military bloggers claimed that commander of the 58th Combined Army of the South Military District ordered the immediate deployment without any pre-combat training of newly mobilized servicemen from Moscow City and Moscow Oblast to the collapsing front line around Svatove around October 2nd and 3rd. Svatove is a town in the east I've told you guys about. It's more or less around here, more or less. Very important fighting going on around here in eastern Ukraine. It's the easternmost point so far in the latest route the Russians have been having. You know how in the last 3 weeks, the Ukrainians really made this big push in the east and did really well? Svatove is kind of the place right now where the Russians are trying to hold the line against the Ukrainians. These guys were sent by their commander with 0 training. They drafted them last month, gave them 0 training, and threw them in the front line. The military bloggers noted that relatives found half of this regiment personnel wounded in a Belgorod hospital. Belgorod is Russia across the border, after the unit got caught in heavy artillery fire. So half the unit is already injured and in the hospital, and they've only been there for 2 weeks. Okay, they were called up 2 weeks ago. Military bloggers noted that the regiment, oh, thank you for the flowers. These are cool too. Thank you for the flowers. I appreciate that, guy. Or the flowers, the feathers. Military bloggers noted that the regiment had no orders. Listen to this. These guys were given no orders. They dropped them on the front and didn't tell them what to do. They just said, shoot. No orders. No command supervision. So they didn't have anybody over them helping them and saying, well, okay, guys, here's what we do. Mind you, no military background, no orders, no command supervision at all. No supplies. Signal, it says. By signal, I think they mean like communications with anybody. And the other half of the personnel was still at the front line. Another military blogger witnessed coffins of mobilized men arriving in Chelyabinsk, Moscow, Yekaterinburg, and claimed that many mobilized men are surrendering to Ukrainian forces. One military blogger complained on October 13th, which would be yesterday, that newly mobilized men are being deployed in a haphazard way that will lead to 10,000 deaths and 40,000 injuries by next February. An additional, he means. Mind you, again, these are guys in Russia who are writing these things publicly, saying Putin is screwing up so much, he's going to get our boys killed. That's if that's dangerous for them. Russian military officials are also continuing to assign men with previous military experience to units that do not match their expertise, right? I like this. That guy is lying. Well, the guy who's lying are Russians on Telegram, so got news for you. It's your people who are the ones claiming this. Russian military bloggers also complaining that military units are dispersing mobilized men among different units. Let me see here. Oh, this is the final one. They're not updating the families on the whereabouts of where these guys are. The families are getting ticked off, and the military blogger said this will lead mothers and wives to form human rights groups that will break Russia from within. Well, guess what the latest scuttlebutt is? The latest scuttlebutt is that Putin is now cracking down on the military bloggers. We don't know whether this is true or not. There are some reports going around, but there are specific names of bloggers they're going after. Two of the names, which would be remarkable if this is true, is one of them is War Gonzo, who any of you following this stuff will know, super duper Russian sycophant bootlicker. I mean, this guy's horrific. And the other one is Igor Girkin, who's been another really and Girkin has been very outspoken. He has been very critical of the Ministry of Defense and of, the leaders about this stuff. So see where it leads. But like I said, I wanted to focus a lot on just this because I thought it was very interesting. I just thought it was very interesting. Stephen has left the building. I'm sorry you had to leave, Stephen. You seemed like such a nice guy. I like to occasionally take a break and block somebody myself, even though I know the mods are doing a great job on TikTok. Thank you. But occasionally people annoy me. I do try to read your comments, guys, as I'm doing the news, even though it's kind of can be a thing to do. Oh, and just to remind folks, so as always, I reset because I know we get new people all the time, especially on TikTok. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my daily, at least Monday to Friday, news show updating on Ukraine, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. That's 6 p.m. And I appreciate your support. If you can do the gifts on TikTok and do the super chat questions and the super stickers or whatever they're called, I would appreciate it because it helps support my work. I'm trying to do this full time, and literally I am being paid by your support. So I appreciate you guys doing this. Ukrainian military intelligence. Okay, so a little bit of what's been going on in the war. The updates in the last 24 hours have been pretty much from Eastern Ukraine. As I was telling you guys, thank you for the origami, more or less kind of up here and then a little bit further down, basically where my finger is. So all in the east here, okay? Thank you for the October thingy. UK, this is from British military intelligence. In the last 3 days, thank you for the burgers, pro-Russian forces have made tactical advances towards the center of the town of Bakhmut in Donetsk. They seized 2 small villages, but these are the first villages seized since early July. So that's July, August, September, so 3.5 months for the first time they've seized 2 small villages. So good for them, but it's 2 small villages, and they haven't seized anything in 3.5 months. However, according to Ukraine military intelligence, it is undermined. These slow progress they're making is undermined by the Ukrainian pressure against its northern and southern flanks, because the Ukrainians are fighting in the north near Svatove, which I was telling you about, and in the south as well. And by severe shortages of munitions and manpower. So in other words, British military intelligence is assessing that even though the Russians are making very slow gains in the east right now, it's going to be hard for them to keep it up because, and these are the Wagner guys, actually the Wagner guys. I think somebody was probably mentioning it. I don't know, Mark, if that's what you were sort of implying there. But yeah, these are the Wagner guys in the east, which is also kind of the only reason they're even doing well at all, is because, you know, they're the guys that are very well trained and the guys that are basically murderers. Having said that, in the east, the other bit of good news for the Ukrainians is Ukrainian forces made gains in northeastern Kharkiv Oblast, northwest of Svatove yesterday. So in other words, what's going on is you've got the Russians making slow gains in the south. You've got, I say the south of the east. You've got the Ukrainians making slow gains heading east. And honestly, the difference between them isn't that much. I mean, it's miles. It could be 20, 30, 40 miles, but they're not that far away from each other. But not a lot of change going on. This was good too. So Eastern Ukraine, listen to this. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that particularly in Donetsk Oblast, and Donetsk is, knocking things over on my desk here. Donetsk is the region pretty much right here on my, can we see? Yep, pretty much right here on my map, okay? Especially in Donetsk, the certain Russian units are receiving orders from commanders to temporarily halt offensive operations due to extremely low morale, psychological conditions, high rates of desertion, and non-execution of combat orders, meaning either they desert or they literally go, we're just not doing it. We're here, but we're not doing it. This is from the Institute for the Study of War. That's interesting. Let's see if this is replicated elsewhere. But the idea that some of these units, they're having to literally freeze in place because these guys are like, that's it. Again, psychological problems, morale, which frankly is what leads to desertion or simply just refusing to follow orders. Again, good news for Ukrainians. The Kerch Bridge debacle. So this is getting interesting too. So the Kerch Bridge is that bridge that got blown up on Friday. Nobody's still sure what happened. Some of the guys I like and trust believe that it was a truck bomb. Again, who set the truck bomb? Could have been the Ukrainians. I still think it probably was, but it could have been the Russians too. Some people think it could have been the Russian Ministry of Defense that was trying to embarrass the Russian security services because the Ministry of Defense was getting so much garbage from the military bloggers criticizing them. So they were trying to show another agency that didn't know what it was doing because that agency was in charge of protecting the bridge. So the Kerch Bridge, Ukraine, the territory in Ukraine, Crimea, the territory in southern Ukraine that was stolen by the Russians in 2014. You get to the very end of Ukraine, and you don't see it here, but right across the water is the beginning of Russia. And Russia then goes all the way over here and up here and up here. So Russia's all the way over here. The Kerch Bridge was a little bridge connecting from the edge here of Crimea, going right across the water. I think it's 7 miles long or 11 miles, maybe 11 miles long, to Russia. Okay. That's the bridge that got blown up on Friday. Big deal. Now, the Russians immediately claimed, and again, remember our lesson of the day, don't believe the Russians when they tell you anything about what's going on with the military. Well, the Russians immediately put out photos of cars going, actually video of cars going across and video of like a train moving. And everyone believed them and said, oh, it looks like the bridge is doing okay. You know, yeah, two lanes of traffic fell into the water, but the other 2 lanes are probably okay and the rail's okay. Well, now we find out, big surprise, not so much, right? There was such a bad fire that it looks like the lanes of the road need to be replaced. It looks like the rail may not even be working. This is The damage to the Kerch bridge likely continues to slow down. This was from Institute for Study of War as well, I believe. The damage to the Kerch bridge likely continues to slow down deliveries of Russian supplies and personnel to southern Ukraine. Krim Reali, I guess a publication, published satellite imagery of over 1,000 trucks on the Russian side of the bridge waiting in a 3 to 4 day line to cross. The publication also found that there are only 4 ferries operating with a capacity of 90 trucks and 300 people each. Maxar satellite imagery showed Russian military trucks using the ferry to cross the bridge. To cross the strait, because the Russians won't even put their military trucks on the bridge. Okay? That's how bad the bridge is. And they can't trust the rail, because the rail, basically, there was fuel on they believe there was fuel on the train cars. And the fire was so great. If you saw any of the pictures, you would have seen massive fires. The fires weren't from the bridge. The bridge just collapsed. The fires were the train car that caught on fire. The bomb goes off, probably a truck, collapses the bridge, and the explosion sets the train on fire. Well, that fire was going on for hours, and it was such a high fuel fire that people think it would have degraded the rail. Even if the rail's still there, the, what do you call it? The structural integrity of the rail would have diminished. The structural integrity of the concrete would have diminished as well. And that basically they've got to replace everything. Anyway, just wanted to mention that because I thought it was an interesting update on the bridge and how it's going. A couple more things. This was really horrific. A story from yesterday I forgot to tell you guys. The Associated Press is reporting they did their own analysis of the Russians kidnapping Ukrainian kids, babies and small children, taking them to Russia and putting them up for adoption with Russians. AP found that several thousand Ukrainian children have been moved to Russia and put up for adoption. Now, mind you, Associated Press is only going to report what they were able to find. There are stories of way more children than this, but AP found that at least several thousand. They found that officials have deported Ukrainian children to Russia or Russian-held territories. Listen to this. Without consent, they lied to the children and told them they weren't wanted by their parents. I mean, right? Used them for propaganda. I saw one of the propaganda videos of the kids arriving at an airport in Novosibirsk, which is 2,000 miles, 3,000 kilometers away from Ukraine on the eastern side of Russia. They took these kids and they made sure that these kids were shipped as far as possible away from Ukraine so they will never make their way home. And they gave them to Russian families and gave them Russian citizenship. And you see the Russian families, like they're playing pretty music and the Russian families are crying as they're taking these kids who were stolen. But imagine, Associated Press found that the children were lied to and told they were not wanted by their parents. That's the one that really got me. I mean, it's bad enough if your parents died and the Russians stole you, because also by internet, I looked into this, under international law, the children have to remain in Ukraine. Even if their parents die, you've got to keep them in Ukraine. That's where they've got to stay and grow up and be turned over to the Ukrainian government. You can't say, well, their parents were dead, we took them. But to tell these poor kids, your parents don't want you. I mean, Jesus Christ. I just can't even imagine. Oh, God. Anyway, nice people. Russia has moved nuclear bombers closer to Norway. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. This is one of those things I've told you guys about before. Thank you, Troy, for that. What I've told you about before, I think I even predicted this last week, actually. I told you guys. I said, if I were the Russians, I'm seeing everybody talk about nuclear war. I'm seeing Biden talk about nuclear war, Macron in France, Donald Trump's freaked out, Elon Musk is freaked out. I would just keep the threats going. And I said this. I said I would take some nuclear bombers and I'd go kind of close to, I think I even said Norway. This is Norway. Didn't I say Norway a couple days ago? I think I did. I said they'll fly near Norway, kind of freak people out. That's what they're doing. They're just trying to freak people out. They're trolling. And as I've said, Norway's a member of NATO. Russia isn't going to do jack with regards to Norway and bombing them or anything else. If they attack Norway, they're attacking all of NATO. We will fight back and Russia will lose. Russia, we will all lose if there's a nuclear war. Nobody wants that, but Russia will lose if there's a conventional war. There is no way. I mean, look at how Russia's doing against Ukraine. Imagine them fighting NATO. 30 NATO countries plus 2. Bye-bye. I'm looking here. Let me just one more little thing. U.S. is announcing some new military aid in the next few days. The Red Cross is saying that Russia is not giving them access to some POWs, which again is a violation of the Geneva Conventions. Oh, okay, good. Let me end on good news. A Wagner employee and an FSB officer, FSB, Russian Security Services follow-on agency to the KGB, one of the follow-ons to the KGB, because KGB was dissolved, so to speak. They changed the name when the Soviet Union dissolved. A Wagner employee, Wagner, and an FSB officer are asking for political asylum in France. The two are now giving testimonies or, witness testimonies to help the international investigation into Russia's war crimes. That gets interesting. That gets interesting. We hadn't talked about war crimes in a while here. I'll end on the war crime thing, and then we can do Q&A and all of that. Thank you for the Aflac duck. People had asked before about, what can we get Putin on war crimes? What's the deal? And what I'd read is it's very difficult to get higher ups in the military responsible for war crimes because you've got to, first of all, we were talking about Bucha, actually, originally, the really horrible attack on that village early on after the first month of the war, and everybody was dead in the street. Remember the horrible video? It was horrible, right? But the problem was, one, people are dead. You've got to prove who killed them, right? Did they, first of all, I would say as a lawyer, okay, the one guy was shot on a bicycle. Was he dead on the ground and a soldier came by and shot him to be a jerk? Or did he shoot him and kill him, right? Okay. Was it a Russian soldier that shot him and killed him? Did the Russian soldier do it on his own or was he acting under orders? Because he's guilty, but then is his boss guilty, right? If the boss gave him orders or general orders and said, hey, if you got to kill, you got to kill, right? I mean, who knows what the boss said? Then the boss is responsible. But what about the general that's overseeing that part of Ukraine? What about the Minister of Defense? What about the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, as we call it? I think they call it the head of the general staff or whatever in Russia. What about Putin himself? You've got to find proof and evidence in writing or witnesses who say, oh yeah, Putin made clear to us that he wanted us to kill civilians in order to make an impact, scare the Ukrainians, whatever. Oh, you want to go enjoy yourself? Sasha wants to enjoy herself. But it's hard to prove when you get to higher levels. With these Wagner guys and the FSB guys, it gets interesting. Thank you for the hat there, for the crown there. It gets interesting because maybe these guys are able to say, I've got memos, I've got conversations with my boss or with his boss, but you might at least be able to now get some of the names and start to put the story together rather than, you get it. All right, let's go and do questions and answers on TikTok. As always, go to my profile and you'll see the Q&A link. Use that and you can submit questions there. The rest of you either use the comment box on the bottom or the super chat questions, of course. And I will always get to super chat questions first when I see them. And for you guys, let me just go in here and look. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't even see that. Harvey, I missed saying hi to Harvey's grandmother. No one told me. Well, I'm sure you guys probably did tell me and I didn't see you telling me. Harvey. Is Harvey here tonight? I hope so. Harvey Kittle. Harvey is one of our regulars. Harvey's wonderful. He and I have had many conversations. Harvey's grandma. Oh, well, I don't know whether Harvey's grandma is on. Well, Harvey's grandma hopefully isn't on tonight. It's like 12:30, unless Harvey's grandma's walking back home with Harvey from from the pub. Oh, God, I didn't realize that. Well, if he's not on now, remind me when he's back. I totally didn't even realize he had put that in. Oh, my God. Yeah, Harvey's wonderful. We love Harvey. All right, let me go try to pull up a TikTok question here. Oh, and make sure you follow me too, guys. I keep forgetting to ask that on YouTube and TikTok and everywhere else. It helps me a lot when you follow as well, please, if you would. So Q&A, did you hear about Russian officials quitting? No, and I'm not sure what you're referring to. No, I don't think so. Some people are saying, hi, Grandma Harvey on oh, Harvey is there. I understand I'm supposed to say hi to your grandmother. By the way, people on TikTok are now going, "Hi, Grandma Harvey." Very cute. That was Carrie. Carrie over on TikTok is like, "Hi to Grandma." Oh, that's really funny. Oh, I have not heard about Russian officials quitting. Nope. Why does Trump always get away with stuff? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get too far off of Ukraine tonight because we're doing Ukraine, but that's part of what worries me. Because I will say this as an American, look, we've got our hubris, a word that I really like. Our arrogance, whatever you want to call it. Sasha is kind of wandering around. If she comes by again, I'll try to grab her. Sorry, someone's asking if they can see Sasha, but she doesn't like me picking her up. So she kind of hides when I'm doing the show because I used to pick her up once a show. And then she learned to hide when I was doing the show. What worries me with the Trump stuff, but then we'll get back to Ukraine, is he does seem to get away with murder. And it worries me because a lot of what he's getting away with are the attacks on democracy. And both parties aren't attacking democracy. And what scares me is it has given me a window into what happens in other countries that we didn't think could happen in America, right? We like to think of ourselves, and I mean, I did too, as, Europe, that place where they have world wars. And in the 1970s, they had a coup, right? They had a military government in Spain. And in the early 1970s, they had a military government in Greece. That stuff happens in Europe. It doesn't happen in mature America, right? We've had a democracy for 250 years. And we think of, and I mean it though, I think of the same thing. We think of ourselves as we've got warts, we've got problems, but on the democracy front, we're not Europe. Europe's pretty good. Well, guess what? That's what scares me with the Trump stuff and with people defending him on everything is even with his attacks on democracy and especially the election stuff, the insurrection, but also his just continuing to lie about he did it again. He's continuing to lie about the election, which already caused people to rise up violently. And he's lying again, which will again cause people to rise up violently. And they're now trying to steal the elections by putting all these people into place around the states and everything else. And the fact that Americans are treating it, that Republicans are treating it as Trump derangement syndrome. Why don't you stop talking about Trump? Rather than going, I don't like Democrats. I prefer Republicans, but I really don't want to overthrow our democracy. I'd be happy to say it, I mean, I criticize Biden all the time when I think Biden's not doing stuff. Biden tells the truth, but you know what? Biden tells the truth. If Biden lies, I have called it, by the way, don't block Johnny for saying, do I think Biden's telling the truth? Because he's being polite about it. That's, by the way, this is the way I want people to disagree is politely. So he's being okay, mods. Don't block him on TikTok unless he's rude. Biden might lie. And honestly, I've said that I don't think Biden's being totally truthful about Ukraine. I think Biden doesn't want Ukraine to win. I think he wants a tie. And I think he's trying to hide it with the language. And he's trying to say, I don't want Ukraine to lose and I don't want Russia to win. And again, because I'm a lawyer, I go, I don't want you to win. I don't want you to lose. I don't want him to win, but that can also mean a tie. That can mean a tie. And I think Biden wants a tie. And I think he's playing games and he's trying to convince Americans that he wants Ukraine to win without saying it because he doesn't want Ukraine to win because he thinks Putin's going to freak out and have nuclear war if Putin loses, And so, yeah, I'm happy to criticize Biden, but the problem with Trump is it's guys, the number of lies coming from the guy, come on. And what's worst, as I said, let's get off of Trump though. I don't want to get more Trump. Let's go back to Ukraine. We'll do Trump again another day. God knows there will be more stories about Trump. What's going on with North Korea and their nukes by the border? You guys can bring this up. I don't know about anything with their nukes by the border. I do know that they launched, God, what did they launch into the air? Their fighter jets or whatever it is. And they got within like 7 miles of a demilitarized area of the sea or whatever. And it was considered even though it was like 7 miles, it was considered very close and very inappropriate and not done. North Korea, we should be worried about. North Korea is crazy. They're crazy. I mean, people keep saying Putin's crazy. I don't think Putin's crazy. North Korea, they're crazy. That's a real, I mean, Putin's a dictatorship, but that's a real dictatorship. He's crazy. I mean, I don't know what he's trying to do. He's trying to get attention. I think he is kind of jealous. I think he is a little jealous that Ukraine's getting all the attention and Putin's getting all the attention. But I mean, man, yeah, I saw that. Jamie is asking your opinion on France saying it's Macron, the president, saying it won't deploy nukes if Russia uses them against Ukraine. So President Macron of France came out and said that France has nuclear weapons. They call it the force de frappe, which is kind of like the force of frapper, to hit. A frappe is also like a shake and drink, a frappe, but frappe is also like the frappe, not to punch, but to hit. And so the force de frappe, it's called, the nuclear force of France. And Macron came out and he said a number of things. He tweeted, we don't want a world war. That bothered me because, I don't want a world war. But when you say, I don't want a world war, Joe Biden, by the way, has said this before too. Biden kept the beginning of the war. Remember, Biden at the beginning of the war kept saying, we don't want a World War III. So when you say that, it sounds pathetic to me. It sounds weak. It doesn't sound stately. It doesn't sound like me saying here, well, obviously nobody wants a world war. It sounds like Biden. Well, we don't want World War III if we give those planes. That's how he said it. He goes, well, if we give those planes to Ukraine, it'll be World War III. So you're telling me you're afraid of Russia. That's how you're using World War III. When Macron said we don't want a world war, it sounded again like Russia did something and Macron is afraid and saying we don't want a world. It sounds weak. Then you get to the nuclear issue. I'd read it briefly, but he said something about, in France, the force de frappe, our nuclear forces will only be deployed based on our strategic interests. And some French commentators jumped in there and said, okay, so you said you're not going to use nukes in Ukraine. You then said that Ukraine, that you would only use nukes for your strategic interests. So Ukraine isn't in your strategic interests in France. That's a nice thing to say publicly when you're jostling with Putin, right? You've now admitted, well, that conflict, sure, we're helping, but it's not that important to us, right? It's said that. Finally, he said, we're not going to use nukes there to respond to the Russians. Now, this one was a bit annoying because the thought was, most people think that we're not going to use nukes to respond to Putin, okay? Partially because what are you going to do with them? If Putin uses nukes in Ukraine, what are we going to do? Are we going to nuke Ukraine too? Right? I don't think the Ukrainians would be very happy with that for starters, right? we don't want to be nuking Ukraine. They're the good guys. Even if there's Russian troops there, there's like Ukrainians there too. So we're probably not going to use nukes. Russia won't, or Ukraine won't, France won't either. But you don't want to say that publicly. You don't want the Russians to know exactly what you're going to do. And that's what worries me, and that's what I think is another problem with Macron. And again, I saw French commentators, French defense experts weighing in and saying the same thing, which is, you want Putin to know that the response is going to be strong. Thank you, Inspired, for that. That the response is going to be strong, or to quote the Americans, catastrophic. Okay, you want him to know that, but you don't want him to know what it's going to be. You don't want him to know, is it going to be nuclear? Are we going to blow up your submarine fleet, or not submarine fleet, but are we going to blow up your fleet in Sevastopol? Are we going to attack all of your troops on the ground across Ukraine? What are we even going to maybe blow up some supply depots in Russia along the border? You want Putin to not know, so that when he's making his calculation as to is it worth it or not to nuke Ukraine, his calculation is going to be, well, if I nuke Ukraine, what are the Americans going to do back? Well, they've already said they're going to blow up our fleet. Okay, is it worth it losing our fleet to nuke Ukraine? Maybe. I don't know, right? This is the analysis the Russians would be doing. But if they don't know what our response is going to be, other than it's going to be big, it's hard for them to do a calculation of whether it's worth it. Anyway, no, I think, unfortunately, it comes across weak. Yeah. There's just, by the way, I do think this. He's a politician. And I will bet you Macron is starting to get some of the pressure at home that we're seeing here. Mind you, we're seeing it from Trump and those guys, from unserious people, Elon Musk. But you're starting to see that, oh my God, nuclear war. How can you support Ukraine? Nuclear war. And maybe Macron was getting the same thing and felt that he had to say publicly, Yeah, Eric is weighing in from Paris. Macron is weak in every domain. Yeah. That he just felt he had to weigh in and say, we're not going to use nuclear weapons, so that people in France could kind of relax a little bit. That's my guess. Nonetheless, in the end, I think it's more dangerous to signal weakness because you empower the bully. And you make it maybe even more likely that Putin will use nukes. Sorry, that is my very long-winded answer, but I think it's an important topic. Biden said the same, no nukes. Did he say, I didn't remember, did Biden say no nukes to respond? Did he? Personally, if they have a meeting and form new sanctions, even if and when Kyiv is hit by 2 nuclear bombs and 500,000 are killed and 2 million are near death. Well, that's the problem too. I mean, it would depend what it is. Anyway, this is obviously a very difficult topic. I mean, I will agree on that front. Let me look for another. Ukraine wants to join NATO. They applied, but NATO isn't going to let Ukraine in. No, not for a long time. I wish they would, but they're not gonna. The same reasons they haven't so far. They're afraid. They're afraid of ticking off the Russians. Should Elon Musk's, I thought about this. This is interesting. So Stuart is asking, should Elon Musk's SpaceX, which controls the Starlink, Kira, I will save this. Yours for next. Should Elon Musk's SpaceX be held to the Defense Production Act, and should a defense contractor be talking to Putin? Correct. A defense contractor should not be talking to Putin. That's the first point, obviously. But so the Defense Production Act is basically a U.S. law that says that, and I forget under what conditions, but maybe it's the president determining a national emergency or whatever. But the president can tell certain industries and certain companies that because it is in the urgent national emergency, they now have to produce X, Y, and Z or do X, Y, and Z. So potentially for example, during COVID, I think Biden actually did invoke it for, it could have been some of the vaccine. Actually, my guess is it might not have even been the vaccine production, but it was the components needed to produce the vaccine, I think is what it was, that he ordered some companies to produce them and make them available, right? That, and keep them for America as well, by the way. I think some of that too was, you've got to keep it for Americans. You can't sell it to Europe, blah, blah, blah. So that's the Defense Production Act. So the question would be, and I don't know the legalness of this. The question is whether defense masks. Oh, okay. Everyone's saying masks. Okay. So for masks and syringes. Okay. Yep. And baby formula would have been more recent. Interesting. Okay. Respirators. Yeah. Respirators, masks would have, and syringes would have been at the beginning, obviously during COVID. So the question would be, under Defense Production Act, can he say, you need to make this number of Starlink systems available? Now, the only thing is, I would be surprised that, I don't think the government can just seize it. I would be surprised under American law. In other words, the government couldn't just say, you're going to produce these systems and you're going to run them for free. I don't think the government can do that. I mean, that would be a taking, which I'm not sure of the law on this, but just my background in law makes me go, and American law makes me go, governments might be able to order a company to do something, and even then it would get challenged in court. But to order a company to provide its services for free, I doubt that would happen. So you'd still have the problem of Musk is saying, I'm happy to provide Starlink to Ukraine, pay me. So that's where it gets weird. I don't know. So what would the U.S. order be? Would the U.S. be telling Musk to do it for free? Kira Luna, with all the Elon talk and how he might be siding with Russia, it makes me ponder again how our alliance with Ukraine would be different if Donald Trump was in charge. Yeah, I mean, the thing with Trump is, who the hell knows? I mean, I worry because, look, the Trumpers say, and I mean, they're not wrong. Under Trump, he didn't invade, and under Biden, Putin did invade. Hard to say. I mean, they would argue that, the U.S. withdrawing from Afghanistan wasn't very pretty the way it happened. And did Putin get emboldened by that? Probably. I think part of it was simply the fact that America finally pulled out of there, and Iraq told Putin, America is exiting 2 wars it's been in for 20 years. These guys don't want another war. The American people don't want it. This is the perfect time to invade because the Americans have now left Iraq and Afghanistan. That's more my guess with Putin, is he thought this is perfect. This is perfect. Because the American people are going to go, don't you dare. I mean, frankly, I'm surprised the American people have been so strong. There's actually a new poll out. I had too many stories today, so I didn't even give you the poll. A YouGov Cambridge Globalism Project poll. Countries with the highest support for expanded sanctions against Russia due to its war in Ukraine were the US, UK, Canada, Poland, Sweden, Australia, and Denmark. The countries with the lowest support for expanded sanctions against Russia: Turkey, Egypt, Hungary, and Indonesia. Of course, Turkey and Hungary. What a surprise. What a freaking surprise. But the Trump thing is Trump was too close to Putin, clearly. And Trump wanted something from Putin. He wanted some business thing. He wanted something. Or Putin had something on him, or Trump just wanted, Putin's business. Trump already said, by the way, Trump said when he was interviewed, I believe it was before he became president, but when he was already the nominee, because I've seen the interview multiple times, and he was asked about Ukraine. And he said, well, Crimea's Ukrainian anyway. They wanted to be Russian. So it's fine. It was fine that Putin took Crimea. And it was just like, dude, that is not American policy. It was not. So that's what worries me with Trump. And by the way, Trump also would have said, it's Europe. I don't care. Let Europe defend itself, which sounds good unless you actually understand international relations and foreign policy and the history of Russia and the Soviet Union, and kind of go, and wars in Europe and everything else, and kind of go, Russia, dangerous, bad. It's not just about Ukraine, even though, frankly, genocide, bad. It's not just about Ukraine. Oh, that's what you're talking about. Well, wait a minute. Thoughts on evacuation of Russians out of Kherson? Jillian, I saw that the Russians were evacuating like everybody out of, they were telling sort of everybody to get out of Kherson. I didn't see that it was just Russians. Was it just Russians? So I'm going to Google this as we're talking here. Let me go evacuate Kherson. Russia orders. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay. As we speak, Jillian's ahead of me of the news here. Hang on. This is from kind of a news site I don't love, though. No, I can't. This is not a real news site. Hold on. BBC. Here we go. That I can trust. Russian installed leader of Ukraine's southern Kherson region has called on civilians to evacuate. That I saw, citing daily rockets attacks. He urged them to save themselves by going to Russia for leisure and study. Yeah, make sure to bring your babies, and ask for Moscow's help. Okay. Yeah. So that, to me, that's what I had read. That's what, unless it's something else, that's what I had read. To me, that means that Russia is planning to bomb the hell out of everything. And they know they're going to kill civilians left and right. And for whatever reason, this time, the Russians are being careful. I will say this. It's possible they've moved in a lot of their own citizens, and maybe literally there are a lot of Russians there. That could be why. Oh, Sean. Hey, how are you? Sorry, my friend Sean, who I've not seen in far too long. We need to make plans, obviously. Sean was just weighing in. 30% disabled vet. I did not realize you had problems. Who very much agrees with your opinions with regards to Biden and all that. And Biden, the economy will only get worse. Republicans take control. I'm not sure what you meant by the last part, Sean, whether you meant the economy will only get worse and Republicans will take control, which might happen actually if the economy keeps getting worse. But yeah, okay. Yeah. Tell John, we need to all get together again. This has been, it's been a couple of years. It's probably been pre-COVID, which is really sick. Let me look here. Putin saw weakness and distraction in the leadership of US, UK, France, and Germany. I mean, yes, although I would not say UK. I don't think UK. I mean, maybe now a distraction, But with Boris Johnson's, oh, I see what you mean. I'm sorry. You mean John is saying the reason that Putin moved into Ukraine is he was seeing weakness and distraction in the US and UK, France, and Germany. Okay, I see what you mean. That's possible. Right, because since the invasion, the UK has been amazing. We've been pretty good, obviously, too. But Poland's been, well, obviously, France and Germany, decent. But the UK has been tremendous, better than us, I would argue, in terms of, in many things, really. Well, and that's another thing too, right? Whether Trump was getting, whether Putin was getting everything he wanted from Trump, so there was no reason to invade and rock the boat. Maybe. Let me pull down. Oh, Bash Brannigan, and thank you for the kite. I've seen that kite before. I was curious about that. Thank you for that. Have you heard anything when Ukraine liberates cities or towns? Are they arresting Ukrainians who conspired with Russians while occupied? Yes, they are. Yes, I read something the other day about it. They are I saw something the other day where they said Ukrainians that simply took aid from the Russians. So in other words, if the Russians were supplying food and the Ukrainians took it, they're not gonna hold them accountable. I think they were telling their people don't take anything because the Russians were doing it for propaganda, but they're not going to hold you responsible for that. But they're talking about people who literally collaborators who went and worked for the Russians, who went and worked for the Russian administration, who, spied on their neighbors, did all sorts of things, right? They're arresting them. Oh yeah. They're trying them for treason. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I mean, I literally saw something the other day. A number of people are getting arrested. And they're obviously kind of worried. The folks who were helping out are not. Also, their neighbors know that they were doing it. I mean, my guess is probably anybody who was collaborating, their neighbors knew, so that, frankly, I'd be worried if I were a collaborator. I'd be worried about just being there. I'd be leaving town because you got to worry about your neighbors doing something to you as far as that goes. You know what I mean? Thank you for the Learjet, Joe Waldman on TikTok. Okay, sure, Jillian. Beep, 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 beep. I did not see. Joffa's asking about a statement from what's her name? Ursula? Is it Ursula von Leyen, the EU head? I have not seen her statement on what Europe would do if Russia dropped a nuke. I did see the statement, and I read it yesterday. It was tremendous from the European Union's foreign affairs chief. Joseph Borrell, I think was his name. Sabrina's deputy Pentagon press secretary. I know Sabrina. Oh no, Sabrina Singh. That's somebody else. Unless that may be the woman I know. Oh no, I know who that is. Yeah, she used to be Kamala's person. Oh, she's at Pentagon now. That's interesting. In any case, yeah. Sorry, what were we saying? No, I'm forgetting what we were saying really quick. I was answering some question. Did I finish? Oh yeah. I don't remember if I had finished the question there that you were asking. Sorry about that. I saw you mentioned Sabrina. Sabrina Singh, Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary, said, I am not aware that the DPA has been looking at or being invoked. Oh, Defense Production Act. Yeah. For Starlink or SATCOM capability. Okay. Yeah. Belgorod, what's going on in Belgorod? I mean, the Ukrainians, okay, what I saw today, Belgorod, and we're going a little late tonight, but it's Friday, so we'll go a little late. Thank you for the hat, for the crown there. Belgorod this is all Russia, okay? All the way, this blue over here, eastern of Ukraine. Kharkiv, second largest city of Ukraine's right here. Literally 15 to 20 miles, you get to the border. And you go 25 miles beyond the border and you're at the Russian town of Belgorod. So you're talking Belgorod is like 45 miles from Kharkiv. I mean, they're right there. They're within HIMARS range of each other, basically. Thank you for the lights there, Jen. So Belgorod is a Russian town that the Ukrainians have attacked a lot, to their credit, ammunition depots. It's a very important town for supplies, for military supplies, ammunition, fuel, things like that. Okay. And the Ukrainians, I'm guessing, went after some of the Russian thermal plants. Thank you for the mariachi hat. Some of the Russian thermal plants today in Belgorod. And I think knocked out power to like a third of the city, which was pretty cool. The only reason I was hesitating is because I also saw some pictures of some explosions that I thought might have been, because the Russians are having a really hard time. They keep launching rockets from Belgorod into Ukraine. And a lot of times these rockets are going up and literally either coming back or, thank you for the hat, Susie, are coming up and like crash landing on homes and other things in Russia. Like their equipment ain't so good. So I wasn't sure today about the Belgorod news, which one it was, but I was assuming since a third of the power is out in town, that would be pretty horrific if the Russians did that. Thank you for the glasses. So I'm assuming that's what it was. Yeah. I did, Elise. Senator Chris Murphy's delightful idea that we should divert air defenses bound for Saudi Arabia and send them to Ukraine. I did see that. A Democratic senator suggested, thank you for that, fireworks. A Democratic senator suggested that the ethicite, that that sort of the next round of weapons going to Saudi Arabia, we send them to Ukraine instead. Now, some others have suggested that Saudi Arabia has Stinger missiles to defend itself from incoming missiles and things like that, and had suggested that because they're still U.S. owned or whatever, that we remove the Stinger missiles too and bring those to Ukraine. So I was like, ooh. So no, I think Saudi Arabia kind of needs a little pushing around as far. I mean, the whale's back. Thank you for the whale. That was terribly cool. Was that flower lady? Thank you. That was very cool. I am somebody who appreciates the need for strategic relationships. I am not somebody who just plays games. Meaning not plays games. I'm sorry, but I don't like people who kind of go, Saudi Arabia is evil. We shouldn't be U.S. evil supporting them and whatever, or Israel for that matter. Strategic relationships matter. It doesn't mean you don't hold your allies responsible and criticize them and everything else, but there's a reason Saudi Arabia is important and matters. Okay. I do see more questions popping up on TikTok. I mean, on YouTube, I've got them. So I get that. Having said that, that country's gotten out of control. And, especially I was talking the other day about this, the U.S. invading Iraq the first time, which was the good war, where we went in and with a coalition of, 93 countries. Thank you, Wanda, for that. That's very pretty. A coalition of 93 countries went, so everyone gets credit, and kicked Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. That would have been incredibly detrimental to the oil markets. That would have been a great threat to Saudi Arabia next. And the U.S. and our allies intervened and saved Kuwait's butt, and frankly, OPEC's butt. They should have been doing a lot. Frankly, they still owe us because they all could be owned by Saddam right now. That's what annoys me. Saudi Arabia, we have to hold our nose and protect Saudi Arabia. Then Saudi Arabia ought to hold its nose and help us, and they don't. And it pisses me off. So I'm all game with cutting off some weapons and saying, you know what? You want to go to Russia? Great. They're unreliable. They're sneaky as hell. They lie. They're corrupt, and their weapons don't work. You want to use the Russian version of Stinger missiles? Great. You want to use Russian fighter jets? Yeah. Good luck with that. But now that's what I would tell the Saudis. More power to you. Kira is a teacher in Texas, and I just got a new student from Ukraine. I spoke with her mom, and she had even said before the war, I'm not sure what you mean by before the war, or I'm not sure what you mean, Kira, about the before the, or you mean just the fact that she was mentioning, before the war, up. Yeah. Yeah, that's sad. Well, they're in Texas already. That's amazing. I'm kind of impressed they got all the way to Texas and that Texas let them in. The governor isn't exactly friend of immigrants, but that's good. Danielle, I canceled my order for a Tesla. Did you really? I canceled my order for a Tesla Cybertruck this morning. Wow. I used to be a huge fan of Elon. Really hope he comes back from the dark side. It was only 100 euros. Oh, I see. You had to eat 100 euros, but it's going to Ukraine instead. Good for you. Well, and if it's only 100 euros, good. At some point in the future, you can reconsider it. But I think it's a nice statement. Were you able to sort of tell them why? somehow, you ought to tweet it. Tweet it and CC me so that way I see the tweet and I can retweet it because that'll get it noticed. You need to tweet it, include Musk, include Tesla as the ats, and then include like CC me on the bottom if you want. But I'll gladly retweet that. Good for you. Good for you. Anyway, now that is true. I will say this. Kelly's throwing this in. Saudi Arabia was instrumental in getting foreign prisoners of war out of the Russian camps recently. They're continuing to assist in getting more released. Now, that is true. Saudi Arabia helped that recent thing where the Brits got released. There were 2 Americans, I want to say, as well. The Saudis helped with that. I didn't do a recap. Let's skip it. It's 10 after 7. I'm kind of tired. So no recap. But yeah, Musk with Twitter scares the hell out of me. Twitter's a whole other thing because I've been watching Twitter carefully since, I've been on Twitter, since 2008. But I've been watching carefully about the machinations of Twitter since 2016. And they used to have, I always say this, I'm worried to say this to get the TikTok gods mad, but neo-N-Zs on TikTok, like Twitter, horrific, the numbers of them. And Twitter wouldn't, I don't have anything on Kherson today. Not really, no. Twitter wouldn't do anything about it. It was horrible. And then finally, Twitter got serious. They went after those guys first. Then they started going after the far right. It was like Milo Yiannopoulos. Crazy people. Unfortunately, the Republicans, the Trump Republicans especially, but started jumping. It wasn't just the Trumpers, started jumping in and defending, but people like Milo, who was awful, right? These guys, because Milo actually was whipping up crowds to go after black women and stuff like that. He was really doing bad stuff. I think he was one of the ones responsible for going after Leslie Jones. Not good what this guy was doing, and people would anyway. Bottom line, Twitter not great, and now he wants to open. Finally, Twitter clamped down, and that's when they got rid of Trump because Trump was using it to whip up the insurrection. Any case, you know what? I want to skip the recap just because you know what, too? I'm going to skip Discord tonight because only because I'm feeling my voice a little, and I'm like, oh my God, the voice thing had better not be back. So help me God. I had gotten bad voice for 5 months. God knows why. So yes, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, moderators. Tomorrow, anyway, I've got my live video chat with all the Discord subscribers, $25 and up. So join us at 2 p.m. Eastern. Those of you $25 and up, all the mods are included for free. 2 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. But it's for moderators and any Discord subscribers, $25 and up, because that was part of the subscription package. But moderators, just because moderators are moderators, and I like to. We don't need you to moderate tomorrow. I like to throw in something for you guys because you guys are amazing. So thank you. Okay, guys, I will see you. Otherwise, I'll be back Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern, New York City time. And I think that's it, So yeah, go check out Erevosis.com, as I said, Erevosis.com, and you'll find my Discord information there. You'll find my Patreon. You'll find my store that has a lot of cool Ukrainian t-shirts, all sorts of stuff. All right, so good night, guys. Good night, Eric, everybody else. All right. Thank you for the gifts, by the way. I appreciate it. You guys came through tonight, and all the moderators as well. Obviously, the TikTok, especially because we love the YouTube, but the TikTok, as always, was out of control tonight. I could tell. So thank you, guys. All right, guys. Have a good night. Boop, boop, boop.